welcome to the Wild Moon Sessions podcast. My name is Bexy and I am your host. Today I have Jes Allen with me from upstate New York. I'm going to let her introduce herself to you all.
Thank you. I am happy to be here. Yeah, I'm currently living in upstate New York, just a couple hours north of the city. Still feeling super connected after living in Brooklyn for about 12 years. I am a practitioner and living my life in an intuitive way. I have been sharing the practices of yoga teaching for about a decade now, along with offering a lot of other healing spaces and working within a wide umbrella of modalities myself. And yeah, I have felt really like the path of healing and healing spaces for myself and others has really been my mission, and continues to hold that light in myself and my life.
And what do you think? So practice as a word, like why is that so important for you? And you have a really deep practice, don't you? I really enjoy witnessing your practice. So could you tell us a little bit more about what it means to you?
Sure, yeah. Well, I went through a lot. I feel like my practice journey and my teaching journey have really been side by side. I didn't really have the path of like practicing for a long time and then deciding to teach. I had a call to teach and serve, and by nature, me wanting to be of service drew me deeper into practice. So those things really feed each other. And so referring to myself as a practitioner has been something that I've really dialed into over the past year. I've worked a lot with like calling myself a teacher, calling myself a student, and I've just and everything in between. And I just landed on calling myself a practitioner because that's what I am. I practice in my life, and I believe that being of service is also a practice, that it's a teaching practice. So everything is in practice. I think that practice, you practice like how you live, and outside of containers of practice. But I've learned so many different practices, and I currently am really devoted to Cha Dao and my tea meditation practice. Also, a very specific meditation practice that I'm working right now. And I have been threading my asana practice back in as the spring has kind of asked for some more physical movement. But what really is that all these different practices allow you to lean and be shaped in different ways. And so over the course of, my life and exploring practices, I feel like I have this tool belt for understanding how these practices can help shape me in different times of my life, and different passages, and I can lean into them and they'll help me lean in the directions that I need to go. So they're always shifting and changing, and they have like their lifespan, and then maybe something comes back or something new comes in and something drops out. But I'm really in flow with, my understanding of the practices that I carry right now, and then new ones that, come in. So
Yeah, I love that. I love the tool belt idea because the more knowledge you have, I always love I think it's the quote, every time you read a book, your mind changes. It like rewires your mind. I love that because I feel like each time you kind of integrate a new practice, it's kind of rewiring your body and your brain all at the same time, isn't it? It's kind of like, oh, and this is possible. And I know that I felt like that once I picked up like ecstatic awakening dance. Like it really, really changed how I experienced and viewed my world, really, but also the idea of practice, what that is. Because I love
open different channels and different dimensions and different spaces within ourselves, that every practice opens a specific space. It's almost like every practice is walking into a new room in a museum, and you are the museum.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
nice. That is absolutely beautiful. I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. So, tell us a little bit about your tea ceremony, because I find that so elegant and precise, and I just love that.
Yeah, so it's amazing. I'm very much a student right now of this practice. It's a practice that was shared with me by one of my dear friends, Alex Crow, who lives currently living out in Santa Fe. Um, and so it's been in my life for about 7, 8 months. And it was just one of those things where she's been practicing for about a year and a half, and I sat with her, and it really was like a very strong experience for me that I knew was going to carry, me for a bit. So yeah, the tradition is it's called Cha Dao, or the way of tea. And tea has been like just such a beautiful space to be in. There's so much I think I could really say about it, but just to really dial it in, is that there's an active, it is a meditation, and there is also the spirit of the tea or the plant, right, in this meditation. And there's a specific technique that is in the ceremony of how you do everything with your hands and how everything is set up. And it's this really beautiful flow of like moving in and out. So there's an action, and then there's the receiving of the tea, and then there's the sitting after you take the tea in, until you intuitively feel like it's time to go for another bowl. So, and it includes all the elements. You're working with water and fire and earth and
Mm,
air. And
mm,
so you're engaging with the elemental body of everything, and also sitting in this energy. And each tea has a particular kind of personality. I find their own spirit that comes in and informs this world. And so I feel like it's a tea meditation, but also meditation is something else on its own. I feel like it's more of a plant medicine, and it is a plant medicine where there is definitely a spirit energy involved, and almost like you learn from these spaces by listening. And
mm.
yeah, so
So
but
beautiful. Sounds so
yeah.
present. You sound like it's like everything is done with ultimate presence, and that that method helps with presence, I would imagine. But it sounds beautiful. It sounds so beautiful. And I love the fact that you talked before about bringing more movement back in with your asana practice as spring has asked it to, because um, I've I've had the strangest feeling of needing to get up and do yoga like since the beginning of this year, and I don't usually get the itch till about this time, in the year. So um I love that idea of like moving with the seasons, and this is something that I really enjoy, to actually embed myself in each season and really, really observe what it's asking from me, and really kind of embody the season in whatever way I can. And I love that everything is beginning to flower and flourish, and all of this really beautiful movement, upward surge of energy, and all of the flowering that is happening and is coming as well. I think it's such a and I think that movement sometimes feels very embodied, and because it's all expressive when we think about a flower opening up, whether it's like a tea leaf and that's coming to its full ripeness, it's going to go and take on another energy, but it's also kind of that like most expressive moment, and in its full ripeness. I love that idea. But I also I know that we would love to talk about transition in general together today. So I think that is a massive point of reference. We've just gone past Beltane, um, and I've felt, particularly for this new moon, I've felt a huge upsurge of energy. I've felt massive, and I know that we've it's been sometimes new moons can kind of walk on by and you don't feel that much with it, but I've definitely felt this like huge just upsurge of like something's happening. It's almost like a rocket ship, it's just getting ready to take off. And that really reminds me of that this kind of like transitional state where sometimes we don't always know what's coming, or we don't know the form in which it's coming, or we don't know how it's going to happen, or there are always little bits missing. And I just wanted to ask you, does your practice help with that, or how are you kind of approaching the transition of spring and Beltane and all of that upsurge of energy?
Yeah. Yeah, the moon, I have also felt that it was like really a flip of a switch, and things have I almost felt like the weeks in between the moons, like the 2 weeks, there was like a almost like a being pulled ways. I went into some heavier stuff prior to this moon, and yeah, this one felt really intentional, and I feel a lot of forward action. And you know, it was about two weeks ago now that I was like, I really need to start moving my body again. The winter was such an amazing time, is such an amazing time to be really deep and introspective and let everything around us die and engage with the void space in between. So deep meditative practices are nurtured during that time because it is the hibernation. And I think something that is really important to always remember is that we are nature, right? We're not like engaging with nature. We are an expression of nature. So when it's winter, we are the winter. And so our practices should be in alignment with that in a way that we can not avoid those spaces, but actually use them to our advantage to let ourselves hibernate, to rest really deeply. And this is what we're coming out of now. And maybe even like, you know, as a New Yorker, like you learn so much about yourself in those seasons too. And like what is transforming and changing and what might be birthing where we are now. And what happens with a birth, birth energy is a very interesting transition and very different than death energy, um, because it asks you to become something, and it asks you to become something new, and that requires you to have courage. It requires you to say, okay, I'm going to make mistakes because I haven't walked in this way yet. And so it's a different kind of, um, yeah, it asks something different from you. I think a lot of times when we think about change and transition, we think about what we're losing. And we do, this is like really deep fall energy, is like, okay, what is being released? But also in the nature of this new moon is like, well, what is coming in? And the birth energy is so much about like revealing this new layer of yourself, and it's very vulnerable. And so I think like right now, the asana coming back in has a lot to do with me reclaiming my power and strength within myself to say I can do something, and cultivate strength in my physical body, cultivate a deeper sense of doing within my body, where like all winter I was drinking tea and meditating and doing restorative and yin and like deep, deep, deep. And now, yeah, things are blossoming, and we are being asked to blossom alongside of or with everything else into something new. And so that strength and courage really has to be there for us to say, okay, I'm going to step out in the phase of life.
Yeah, I think that's it, and that's what practice can be so amazing for. It can help you peel back those layers of, like you say, courage, like being able to stand true in yourself and to really. I always think about plants and the way that they grow, and the way that they have to have a really great root system in order to surge up. Like I have a load of spider plant babies in my kitchen, and I've been growing them in water, and the roots are huge, and they're just waiting to get in some soil, and then they can root down, and then off they go. It's that kind of. I always find that I find that the more physically I am grounded, the better I feel like I can turn up and make those courageous decisions, or really feel ready to kind of question myself or know which direction I want to go. So often there's a lot of different options, isn't there? But yeah, I get such a. I think transitional states in life can be well, I've recently been reading about something called allostatic change. And it actually really, really, really challenges our subconscious mind to change anything, because our body and our subconscious mind catalogs every single experience that we've had, and it really gets used to these ideas of normality. And as soon as we kind of like want to step towards something different, it's like, oh, are you sure? You know, and I think it's I think there's massive power in being able to own that. And I think practice really, I mean, practice works on a subconscious and conscious level, doesn't it? It really activates all parts of us as we're doing it. And I think when practice can really, really empower you to be able to just observe those states, those very natural, very human states, like whether it's feelings, whether it's anxieties, just lots of emotions. You know, I'm not too proud to say I spent the whole of the other day just sobbing, and I didn't honestly know a lot of why. I think it was just everything, you know, that kind of rocket ship energy. It was on the new moon. And I think that being able to just either feel it, not judge it, to be able to then move forward with the transition or with whatever's turning up. I think there's so much strength in that, just allowing that kind of humanity to help you, not sort of disarm you. It just really use that as a kind of like a grounding. Yeah, I know where I am and it's okay. You know, I've got my practice
Yeah.
and I know what I feel, I know who I am, and that can really help dampen any noise that you feel is distracting or making transitions harder, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think, you know, we just practicing awareness, I feel is the most important thing. So you have to have a certain level of awareness within each of these awareness practices to know which one is also going to be the most supportive for you at any given time. And you also have to know that sometimes the one that is there is not going to be the one that you naturally want to do the most. So there's that, you know, you have to let the practice kind of guide you as well. But in transitions, and sometimes we, you know, we know who we are, but when something is changing, we might feel like we don't know who we are in that moment because something is changing so big that we say, oh, well, maybe I was that thing, but what is being asked of me now is very different, or not something I expected, or not something I could have anticipated. And this is what I think is challenging with the birth energy of change, because the death is like, okay, I can let that go, I can be present with my emotions, I can grieve that or whatever, and now I'm opening myself to the mystery of the unknown. And the birth is still the mystery of the unknown, because we don't know what our new embodiment is going to be, and this requires a lot of listening and surrender. And all transitions and all of life requires a lot of listening and surrender to be able to navigate it in a way to be present with your life. But a call, and we all experience towards this next phase in our life. I feel like, you know, the future draws us towards it, and we, you know, go. And so when we're being called towards something that is not what we thought, or what, right, this is the hard thing too, because like you were speaking into the mind, is it gets really wrapped up in the ideas of I know who I am. But but what is that, right? What are these ideas that we're carrying? And then when something else opens for us and is like, oh no, surprise, you're going to shift into this new role. There's a level of surrendering to what is being asked of you, but then using your will to step forward into that. So you have to say, okay, I'm gonna, you know, it's how many times we hear this, like, forget all the ideas that you had about yourself so you can become the person that you actually are. But this doesn't happen once in our lifetime. This is happening over and over again. You don't find yourself one time and then that's what you are. You're constantly growing and dying and being reborn. And we all have this experience. And we Yeah. It's funny that, and we're talking about surrender, and the internet got disconnected. So we are, you know, we're not in control. Um, but Yeah, we'll see where the gods are okay with us picking back up the, dropping out the ideas of what we, the ideas that we had for ourselves, and being so locked into our ideas, and knowing that they are actually ideas, and that our soul also has a formless longing, and we all know this feeling of being really called towards something when you feel your inner light glowing in a particular direction. There's a magnetism
Mm.
that starts to take you, and this is, this is the mysterious unknown, and so exciting and so scary at the same time, to say, I'm going to move into this new thing that is being asked of me. This is how I experience my life: is this thing is being asked of me. This is a language that I use, and yeah, to move forward into that is the level of surrender, saying like, okay, I'm going to move towards this thing. I'm surrendering to my heart, to my soul. Like, I'm trusting that this force that is absolutely unseen, but absolutely deeply felt, and does not have words, but has a strong feeling, is guiding me in the right direction. And then I am willing to access my will, my action, to step forward into that. So there is a level of surrender, but then there's also like, there's an action also, which is required of you. You don't just sit in a raft and go down. You also have to have an oar to guide as that thing is going.
Yeah, and I think that this is a really beautiful kind of conversation, because in terms of awareness and awakening, I know that my experience of my awakening, I certainly didn't feel like I had a raft. I know I did, but at the time I felt like that was a huge transitional point in my life, where every idea that I had of myself was basically it was much up. It was like all the way downstream from where I was. I'd lost my sense of self, and I was kind of having like a huge existential crisis, essentially. And I think that sometimes when people feel as though they don't have an awe, you actually do. You have more that willpower, like you're saying, the actions, even if they're small actions, and they're the types of actions where you take new sorts of kindness with yourself, or you take yourself for a really present walk, or you read like a specific quote. Or I know that I'm massive in those moments. I had an Eckhart Tolle book at the time, and I couldn't read past a certain page. Like my light was saying, no, that's all you need to get you through this next whatever it is that you're going to go through. Anything more is for later. This is for you now. And even just being able to take that level of presence around with me was like a gift to myself, which I'd granted. And I think those it's like I say, I feel like some people might feel like that the transition that they're in might not feel like their choice, but it there are so many little things, like you say, even if it's a tiny oar and you kind of just guiding it back to the center of the river or whatever it is. That's such a powerful thing to be able to do for yourself. The size, or the whether it's a practice or whether it's just like a daily drop in with yourself, like what could I do for myself today? I think that that's so we can undervalue that, actually. So yeah, I just wanted to add that in, because I know that I understand that feeling of like, okay, right, I'm surrendering. Like, I do not know what is coming next, and it is frightening. Like, it can be really frightening. But it's also, I think, whether it's an awakening or whether it's just a new year or a new chapter in your life, as you're saying, it's also massively exciting, isn't it? It's also like, oh my word, like whether it's growing up or adventuring somewhere new, or feeling that call, like you're saying, to be like, I'm not sure where I'm going on my adventure, but I know that there's definitely something for me to do, and it's of importance to me. Um, is there any, I guess, with your practice and kind of talking about surrender specifically, is there anything that you think really, really helps to just soothe and surrender?
Yeah, you know, something that came to me when you were saying um it feels out of your control, like it feels like, yeah. Yeah, I think there's a certain level we have to understand that like our life is out of our control and we also have control of it. This is like there's the river and the oar, you know, like you're not you don't have like the engine and you're going exactly where you want. Like you are also being taken by the water. You're being shaped by the nature that you are.
Mm,
Right? You're part of this whole thing that is happening, and that is the part that you are not in control of, and that you're never in control of. And what practice does is it also gives you something to be in control of, right? Like, okay, I can sit down and drink this tea in this practice, and I can say thank you for this practice for allowing me to feel like I have a container for all of this formless stuff,
mm,
or I can align my body in a certain way. That's a container that I have control over to help understand the all of the contents that have no form.
mm,
So the practice is the form to understand the formless. And I would just invite anybody who's saying like I'm feeling out of control, this thing is happening to me, you know, but is it your highest good? When you really tune into what is happening, I would argue that it is something that you want to happen. And and it will inevitably ask you to say, okay, well, what are all my fears and limiting beliefs around what this is? Because if I can get through all of the things that are so scary to me, all of my possible failures and vulnerabilities and things that I've been taught in the past, if those were not here, is what is happening, or is what I'm being invited into actually what I want, or
mm,
actually my higher self drawing me forward, even though there is pain alongside of that or fear alongside of that.
mm,
So something to explore, because I do feel like we're never being drawn into places that we don't actually want to be in or don't actually serve us. And they do require us to say, my fears are coming along with me and I have to navigate those things.
mm,
And it's actually from being drawn forward into this next thing that we extricate these fears, that we have the opportunity to move these fears aside, which is the continuation of our ever blossoming selves.
mm. Yeah, I love that. I love that. I was listening to um, Matt Kahn yesterday on with one of um, his transmissions, and he was talking about how, like, when you think about this like grand map of life, call it the grand river of life, right? We're all on this river together, we're all going in different directions doing our thing, and there was this idea that you can give yourself a to-do list of things, whether it's spiritual, whether it's physical, whether it's I don't know, diet wise. You can give yourself all of these practices or things that you need to do, but ultimately, are they serving you? And it really reminds me of Krishnamurti as well. Ultimately, is this feeding me? Ultimately, if I just stop and say, like, fundamentally, like, I'm perfect right now as I am, like, does that just kind of allow things to soften, relax? Like, your whole nervous system really, really does relax when you tell yourself, I am perfect exactly where I am, exactly how I am, exactly as I am. And I love that idea that we kind of get to decide what feeds us. We get to decide how we talk to ourselves, and we also get to decide how we approach transition like that, because each step of transition is so important. I think that often the tendency is to think, well, it's a transition, it's like whipping a plaster off, isn't it? Like a band-aid, like it's like just get it off. But actually, I think that when you can honor all of your steps in your transitions, I think that that's a huge place to be, and such a powerful tool, actually, as you were talking about tools, because it's also, like you're saying, you're taking your fears with you, but you're also getting to understand yourself in a hugely different way in that moment. And because we are always changing on both a cellular level and you know, in any sort of way, just as nature is changing constantly, we I think that sometimes we forget the I think it's like the diamonds. There's diamonds in the rough, or what? Not rough even. It's just there. They're there to be. You know, if you were to think about when you're trying to find gold at the bottom of a river, you're panning it out, aren't you? And there's always those things. There's always those little things like, oh, maybe I didn't know that about myself, and I am so grateful to know that now, or I'm so grateful to leave that there and know that I can like release that, use elemental medicine, use whatever it is that feels good, or be able to identify it, to be able to then say, you know what, I want to go and work with tea and learn how to do this, or I want to go and release it via dance, or I want to go and release it via yoga, or whatever symbolic ceremony you can have with yourself. I think that that's also really beautiful, to honor each of those stages with yourself.
Yeah, because we're walking towards the climax all the time, right? We're like each of our steps is we're always in transition, right? We're always in process, but sometimes they feel like a bigger explosion or bigger. But when you look at like everything, whatever you might be transitioning into or through in this moment, just look back a little bit. It didn't start right now. It's been happening. It's been happening. Even if you haven't seen it or understood it, it's all been happening little by little by little. And now is something, you know, I've been calling the choice point. Then there's a point in which you realize it's the tipping point, right? Where like, okay, we've been walking, we've been walking, we've been walking, and now this thing is opening. It's like the stem is growing and there's the bud, there's the bud, there's the bud. The transition is in all of this, but at a moment the bud opens. So there is something that feels a little bit bigger, and that's the breath.
Yeah, I love that. And there is, like you say, and I think that's one of the change can become a really nurturing thing. It can also be a really soothing thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be a place where and I say this with mindfulness because some people find change very, very like it's almost too much. But I think when you've been through it a couple of times, or you've experienced quite big feelings of change in your life, I think then you feel ready and open to accept and invite in more of it, and able to handle it, you know, and able to kind of navigate it, as you say, with all of the tools that you do have. And I think that's what, when it comes to, like you say, whether it's changing in relationships, whether it's changing in circumstance, whether it's changing in location, whether it's changing in the weather. I mean, you know, changing in seasons massively affects people. You know, depending on where you are on the planet, it can be a really huge thing. So I think it's actually how you process it and how you have like a reflective time with yourself. And I personally think that this like rocket ship energy has totally got to do with, well, there's huge transitions going on astrologically, but I think that the Taurian energy generally is all about fundamentals and basics and literal our earthly body. Literally, you've just arrived and you're figuring out what's what. You know, it's kind of like that. And I think that I know that those themes particularly have been quite prevalent for me in the last month or so, but particularly since we've rocked over into May. And I think often transitions can feel really fundamental. So in that sense, if you are feeling this rocket ship energy as we're talking about, you know, it's quite a natural thing, and it can be, you know, it's in the sort of personal space of the astrological mandala in the 360 degrees. So it really is something that we all experience, but in a very individualized manner. And that's what the amazing thing about it is. And obviously the moon is a very, very personal planet. So yeah, I think transition is such a great thing to reflect on right now, because I always feel that this is the most fertile time of year. I feel like nature's just like, all right, I'm ready. I've got everything ready. What's going to happen? It's almost like it's got its backpack on for a festival and it's just waiting to get there. It's like it's just about to make the journey or whatever it is. I think that I think particularly at this point in this year, 2021, I think right now in the UK, we're coming out of like a full lockdown for quite a long time, and we've been allowed to see people and all of that sort of stuff, but it's definitely taken until this point to get it to a bit more normal. And I think maybe because of there's a lot of rocket ship energy anyway, but all of this sort of more social interaction, everybody gets around each other in summertime way more anyway. It's a much more social time of year. It can feel more pronounced, and I think that that's definitely the case because with everything that has happened over the last 12 months, it feels as though things are changing. I get such a deep sense of that. But yeah, I mean, I just want to say thank you for chatting through transitions today, Jess, because that's such a powerful thing, such a powerful thing. And I think we could sit here and talk about change all day because there's so many aspects of it. But
absolutely.
Yeah. But do you want to just mention any social media channels that anybody can find you on?
Sure, yeah. I mean, my Instagram is I guess, it's my name, Jess Allen, JESAL, little dots in between the whole thing. My website is jessallen.com. It's Jess with one S, Allen, ALLEN. Yeah, and I have a Patreon account with lots and lots of practices on it. And but even just to be connected, those are the sources.
Yeah, amazing. And I just want to say thank you so much for your time and your energy and coming on to talk to us today. And until the next episode, take care of you. Press subscribe below and support this community of practitioners. And we'll see you next time. Take care of you for now.